What if the person who hurt you the most never actually changed, and the only thing that really broke was the picture you had painted of them in your own head? Stay until the end, because what you're about to hear might completely change the way you understand betrayal, disappointment, and the story you've been telling yourself about the people closest to you. Picture this scene. You find out something about someone you trusted, someone you were sure would never do this to you, and the ground seems to shift under your feet. You replay every conversation, every gesture, every promise, searching for the exact moment it all went wrong. But here's the uncomfortable truth hiding underneath that pain. Most of the time, we don't grieve only for what someone actually did. We grieve for the version of them we had built in our minds, a version that was loyal, without exception, loving without conditions, permanent without doubt. And when reality collides with that image, it doesn't just disappoint us. It shatters something we had quietly been depending on. In the early 20th century, a psychiatrist named Carl Jung spent decades studying something most people never stop to examine: the hidden architecture of the human mind, the parts of ourselves we project outward without even realizing it. One of his most striking insights was this: we rarely see other people exactly as they are. We see them filtered through our own needs, our own wounds, our own unmet longings. And the greater our inner emptiness, the more elaborate the picture we paint over the person standing in front of us. Think about it for a moment. When you meet someone who makes you feel safe, admired, chosen, a part of you doesn't just notice those qualities in them. A part of you starts building an entire story around those qualities, filling in every blank space with exactly what you needed to believe. You're not necessarily wrong about who they are, but you're rarely seeing the whole picture either. You're seeing a mixture of the real person and the character your own psychology desperately needed them to play. This is why, when someone eventually acts in a way that contradicts that picture, the pain feels disproportionate to the actual event. It's not just that they lied, or disappointed you, or let you down. It's that an entire internal structure, built over months or years, collapses all at once. And underneath the wreckage of that collapse is a question most people never dare to ask themselves. Was I in love with this person, or was I in love with what I needed them to be? Stop for a second and think about the relationships in your life that ended in the deepest disappointment. Was there ever a moment, long before the ending, when something felt slightly off? A comment wrapped in a joke that wasn't really a joke, a promise quietly forgotten, an absence that repeated itself just a little too often. A strange discomfort whenever something good happened to you. Most people, when they look back honestly, realize the signs were there long before the story fell apart. We simply chose not to look directly at them, because looking meant admitting that the picture we had built wasn't entirely true, and admitting that felt far more painful than staying inside the illusion a little longer. This isn't a flaw unique to you, it's simply how the human mind protects itself. Facing reality too soon, before we're emotionally ready, can feel like losing everything at once. So instead, we quietly negotiate with ourselves. We tell ourselves it wasn't that serious. We tell ourselves they're just going through something difficult. We tell ourselves that if we just give a little more, adjust a little more, forgive a little more, the picture will hold together after all. And in doing that, we often abandon our own perception of reality in exchange for the comfort of the story we'd rather believe. Here's something worth sitting with for a moment. Some relationships in your life were never really connected to who you are. They were connected to what you provided. Your constant availability, your willingness to say yes, your habit of never setting a boundary, never asking for anything in return, never questioning behavior that quietly hurt you. As long as you kept playing that role, the relationship felt stable. But the moment you begin to change, the moment you start saying no, start protecting your time, start asking for the same effort you've always given, something interesting happens. Certain relationships don't survive that shift. And this reveals something important. They were never held together by who you are. They were held together by what they were getting from you. When this happens, it's common to be accused of becoming distant, selfish, different somehow, as if setting a boundary were some kind of betrayal. But consider a different interpretation. Perhaps what actually changed wasn't your character. It was your willingness to keep absorbing something that was never fair to begin with. And if a relationship can only survive on your side by requiring you to disappear a little more each day, that relationship was never asking you to show up. It was asking you to keep vanishing. There's a sentence worth carrying with you long after this video ends. Not every warmth is love, not every presence is loyalty, and not every closeness is real connection. Some people don't miss you when they're gone. They miss what you gave them. And learning to tell the difference between those two things might be one of the most important skills you ever develop. Now, here is where this conversation shifts from painful to genuinely useful. Disappointment, as unbearable as it feels in the moment, carries within it an invitation most people never accept. Instead of only asking, "Why did they do this to me?" there's a second question hiding underneath. A harder one, a more honest one. Why didn't I want to see what was happening? This question isn't about blaming yourself for someone else's choices. You are never responsible for another person's dishonesty, cruelty, or betrayal. But you are responsible for understanding your own patterns, the needs, fears, and insecurities that made a certain kind of illusion so appealing to you in the first place. Maybe it was a fear of being alone. Maybe it was a deep need for approval. Maybe it was a quiet belief that love has to be earned through constant self-sacrifice. Whatever it was, disappointment has a strange gift buried inside it. It forces you to finally look at the parts of yourself you'd been avoiding. Jung had a name for these hidden parts of the psyche. He called it the shadow, the aspects of ourselves we push out of conscious awareness because they feel too uncomfortable to face directly. Our fear of abandonment, our hunger for validation, our difficulty accepting reality when reality refuses to match our expectations. These pieces don't disappear simply because we ignore them. They keep operating quietly in the background, shaping who we're drawn to, what we tolerate, and how long we stay in situations that no longer serve us. A painful betrayal, as devastating as it feels, often drags these hidden pieces into the light in a way nothing else could. This is uncomfortable work, and it rarely feels rewarding in the moment. But something remarkable tends to happen to people who commit to it. As you grow more aware of your own patterns, you become far quicker at recognizing behavior that once would have taken you years to notice. A small inconsistency that used to slide right past you now stands out immediately. A vague promise that once felt reassuring now sounds exactly like what it is. Words without commitment behind them. This growing clarity is powerful, but it comes with a side effect worth preparing for. It tends to shrink your circle, not because you've become harder to please, but because you're no longer willing to build entire relationships out of illusions. This new clarity can sometimes look, from the outside, like coldness. People who once benefited from your endless patience may describe you as distant, guarded, changed. But clarity and coldness are not the same thing. Coldness withdraws out of resentment. Clarity withdraws because it finally sees the difference between connection and convenience, and refuses to confuse the two any longer. It's worth being honest about something else, too. Not everyone who leaves your life represents a loss. Some relationships were only ever sustained by illusion, by unspoken need, or by simple convenience. And when they fall away, they leave behind something valuable: space. Space for relationships built on something sturdier than projection. Space for people who don't require you to keep performing a role in order to stay close. Now, let's talk about what all of this looks like in practice, because understanding an idea intellectually is very different from applying it in your daily life. The first step is learning to separate what someone does from the story you've built around what they do. The next time someone disappoints you, before reacting, pause and ask yourself honestly what actually happened, stripped of the interpretation, the assumptions, and the meaning you've automatically attached to it. This isn't about excusing harmful behavior. It's about seeing clearly enough to respond wisely, instead of reacting from the wreckage of a shattered illusion. The second step involves paying closer attention to the early signals you tend to override. Most people already have a quiet internal sense when something feels inconsistent, long before they're willing to consciously admit it. The next time that quiet discomfort shows up, resist the urge to immediately explain it away. Sit with it. Ask what it's actually telling you, rather than rushing to protect the story you'd prefer to believe. The third step is perhaps the most difficult. practicing the willingness to lose people who only stayed because you never asked for anything. This is genuinely hard, especially with relationships you've invested years into. But holding on to a connection that only survives through your own self-erasure isn't loyalty. It's a slow, quiet abandonment of yourself, dressed up as commitment to someone else. I want to pause here and clarify something important. None of this is an argument for becoming guarded, suspicious, or unable to trust anyone again. That would simply replace one kind of imbalance with another. The goal isn't to stop seeing the good in people. It's to stop building an entire identity for someone based only on the good you want to see, while quietly ignoring everything that complicates that picture. Real trust isn't built on ignoring inconsistency. It's built on watching someone's actions align, consistently, with their words, over time, in situations both easy and difficult. Think about the people in your life who feel the most solid, the most genuinely trustworthy. Chances are, it's not because they never disappointed you in small ways. Everyone does eventually. It's because, when they did, they owned it, adjusted, and kept showing up with integrity. That kind of steadiness can't be manufactured through idealization. It can only be recognized through observation, patience, and a willingness to see people exactly as they are, not as you need them to be. Now I want to offer you something to sit with. Imagine the version of yourself that no longer needs anyone else's approval to feel like enough. Imagine relating to people not from a place of quiet desperation to be chosen, admired, or needed, but from a place of genuine wholeness, where connection is welcomed but never required to complete you. That version of you doesn't build elaborate illusions around the people who enter your life, because that version of you isn't relying on anyone else to fill an emptiness that was always yours to fill. Getting there isn't instant. It happens slowly, through the uncomfortable work of noticing your own patterns, tolerating the discomfort of seeing people clearly instead of how you wish they were, and choosing, again and again, not to abandon yourself in exchange for the comfort of an illusion. But every time you choose honesty over comfort, you build something far more valuable than the fantasy you let go of. You build a version of yourself that can no longer be shattered by someone else's inconsistency, because your sense of worth was never resting on their hands to begin with. Let's return for a moment to where we started. That moment of devastating discovery. The ground shifting beneath your feet as an illusion collapses all at once. Now look at that same moment again, with everything we've talked about today in mind. That collapse wasn't only loss. Somewhere inside it was an invitation, uncomfortable and unwelcome, but real nonetheless. An invitation to finally see clearly, to understand your own patterns, and to build, from that point forward, relationships rooted in reality instead of illusion. Before we finish, I want to leave you with one final thought. The next time disappointment knocks you off balance, resist the urge to only ask what's wrong with them. Ask, instead, what you needed to believe badly enough that you overlooked what was right in front of you. That question won't feel comfortable, but it's the beginning of a freedom most people never experience. The freedom of no longer needing anyone else's approval, presence, or perfection in order to feel whole. If you made it to the end of this video, comment, "I am important," and I will reply to you personally. If this resonated with you, subscribe to join the community and hit the like button if you enjoyed it.